Well, hello and welcome to the stream. Let's go ahead and see what we can get into. We're going to be doing a little bit of hard bill this evening. And this will be the third installment of the YouTube hard bill saga about the reptilian agenda with the first coming of the Anunnaki. We're going to look into that, but in the meantime, we're going to get right into it. We're going to pick up on some Art Bell, and we're going to be doing the Blanche Barton Church of Satan interview with Blanche Barton. Enjoy.
Americans out west, if you all could evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world, time zones. I'm Matt Bell, and this is Midnight in the Desert. And this is also the London Storm Cat. I'm not very well, I don't know if next to I'm not even alive. And I go off that I go my time. I come up with this for my friend of the real called Income. I don't put it up. So if something happens during the show, I just want you to tell them. Well, the show is simple. No bad language. We don't allow bad language. Because on this here, only one goal. The show. We have that. We're going to tell us for the next hour. If one wedding hits, he's living in a webmaster for 20 years. Also, we have a wedding. And go to the website. I'm going to message the website. They complained bitterly last night. I just TV last night. It was Andrew rather. Andy wants to be called a guest Chicago, and he couldn't make it because his Skype was full ahead, and so we went to a backup number, and that turned out to be a cell phone. And I said, well, how about something plugged into one? And said, yeah, but one of those is a portable thing, but it's dead. Meaning, battery power. So we have no way to do it. So the Belgrade group complained bitterly, and just for them, this vaguely lovable group of rallygags, and went to grant admission to my Andrew, Andy, if you will be here. So there you have it. Rescheduled already, and he will be on a landline. So there you go, Belgamers. Your wish comes true. Streamlabs. You guys who get the show you and LaVey.net who gets it today, my sales guy, Peter Eberhardt, and I mention this as frequently as I can. You really should contact him. We have so few commercials that, yours just stands out. The book told us a couple of items here from the fiery explosions in China. As I knew it would, it has now climbed to 50. 700 were injured. It was horrible. They still really don't know exactly what it was. Now, we talk about in the condition of climate. It's nothing compared to that. In China, air pollution is killing 4,000 people a day. Every day. 1,000 people a day. Can you imagine that? In one of the deadliest single attacks in post-war Baghdad, a truck bomb shattered a popular fruit and vegetable market in the King Shiite neighborhood. 67 dead, 150 wounded. Boy. From the Anonymous.com, and a lucky eyewitness in Illinois got the sighting of a lifetime during a thunderstorm. Maybe I better not read this. You're going thunderstorm last month, and we managed to capture one of the most elusive phenomena to ever be studied, not a UFO, the phenomenon that has been tentatively identified as LaVey. LaVey ignores all actual rules. It ignores gravity, it ignores everything, it goes where it wants to go, it goes where it wants to do. It's an interesting piece of land that I live in, it's about 6 miles from the California border. In fact, when you look at that picture, the green circle of that kind of radar shot is exactly what I am in that green circle. At least for now. All right, so coming up in a moment is, and I have been sprinkling the studio, by the way, with my area, actually, the time over here, incredible holding. Born and raised in San Diego, this amazing person from Orange Garden graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Maryland College with a degree in journalism and literature. She met Antoine LaVey. I guess you know who that is, right? Most of you? She met Antoine LaVey the day after the previous high priestess left the Black House. Barton became LaVey's companion and mother of his only son. She became high priestess of the Church of Satan, holding the throne until April 30th, 2002, when she assumed the role of care mistress of the Council of Nine. The biography of LaVey, The Secret Life of the Satanist, a authorized biography of Anton LaVey, was originally published in 1990, and an expanded edition is available now. Rhodes also wrote The Church of Satan, a history of the world's most notorious religion. All right. We're going to break here, and when we come back, Blanche will be here. Yes, the storm has moved in and released me and the entire program. Anyway, take a look at the radar. You have an idea exactly where I am. Was. I'll take your bed, you're going to regret it. I'm the best as ever been. All right, here comes Blanche Barton. And the now high priestess. And I have seen Blanche Barton's program.
Mr. Carter, we need it now. Heavy desert. It's the dark zone too. The Perseid shower, I tell you, it's still coming.
I don't know what she is. Anyway, we have to talk about this way better, and I was saying not just communism and Canada's people fighting in activation, that obviously is probably
Well, people are very respectful to me, but my title officially is the misconceptions, which is the role of this high priestess who is taking training and doing a bang up job of it. As the high priest. Yeah, she's good. That just means that I'm the head of the Council of Nine, and that I'm the grand poobah in the Church of Satan, right below the other ultimate grand poobahs.
Okay. And we immediately do this and find out what is the difference, if any, between Satan and today.
I would use them both interchangeably. I think it would be important for us to start our conversation with your understanding that we use Satan, the devil, Lucifer as a metaphor. We don't worship the guy with horns and pitchfork. We don't believe that such a being exists. We don't believe that God or the devil or hell or heaven exists. It's all within us. We own our own destinies. We all are our own gods. We're self-purifying. And we're responsible for our own happiness and our own success and our own failures. And to make it short and sweet, life is short. And there's no reliable evidence that there's anything beyond this life. So you better make this life count and enjoy it while you can. So, all right.
If one then why would you even bother over the truth that is needed?
That is a very good question. And Anton LaVey was asked that very question when he started the Church of Satan. And people say, if you would just call it something else, if you call it humanism, he talks about this in the Satanic Bible, which he published in 1969. If you call it humanism or even typhonism or something, maybe we get more followers. But his point was that he didn't want more followers. The point of calling it Satanism is there's always a Satan in every culture. There's always the accuser. There's always the other. There's always the one outside. And he's the scapegoat. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous to have scapegoats. Christianity has scapegoats. Muslim beliefs have scapegoats. And to demonize others, when you say, I'm a good guy, and those people over there are bad guys, we can kill them, we can shoot them, we can torture them because they're the bad guys. And you know that Satan is evil, right? Because you've been told that all your life.
Yes, yes.
But what else? This is a word that you've been programmed to be afraid of. So what else have you been programmed to be afraid of? Liberal? Conservative? Abortion? How are you being manipulated by politicians and people who want to take your money? So that's the point of calling it Satanism, is don't believe the stuff that's being fed you.
Donald Trump scares me a little.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Yeah, that's why we're here. That's why you need Satanists right now, because the political season is kicking off, and look at what you have to choose from. We're not just about anti-Christianity or anti-theism. That's a very big part of what we are, but anything that's a sacred cow has to be examined and challenged. Whenever you see broad generalizations or scapegoating or ad hominem attacks instead of actual arguments on important issues, you were talking about, we've got serious environmental problems right now. We've got serious economic problems. And what are we doing? We're killing each other over tantrums, over lies. And that's not how we bring things together to save our planet right now. And that's what we're all about.
All right, let's get into this. Over lies. And there's a very broad brushstroke right across all of religion, from God to the devil.
True, right? True. Yeah, well, the point is that we do enter the ritual chamber. We have lesser magic, greater magic that we indulge in as a part of poetic nature in humans. So we do it consciously. We go into what we call the intellectual decompression chamber. We put on our robes and we call forth the icons that we find bring us power within ourselves. But we know that we're calling forth the power within ourselves, but we're using the poetic metaphors to reach places, that part of the human brain that we don't quite understand, and a lot of your other people that are on your show try to understand more, consciousness and the powers of the human brain and human potential. We do it based first and foremost on reasonableness and rationality. Then we add in the more metaphysical explorations, or if we don't want to, it's not necessary to do that as a Satanist. But if you want to play with the poetics of it, then that's okay too. But we don't build our foundation on sand. And that's what most religions do. They build them on sand, and they lead to blindness and prejudice, and they impose ignorance on their children and a distrust of science. And that's not the best of what human beings can be.
Well, what you preach is all good stuff. The pulpit from which, the position from which you preach, perhaps calls into question, many people call the whole thing is called into question, anyway, Satan, and the word, you're right, the devil, Satan, whatever, it scares the hell out of you. And I guess that's exactly what it's intended to do.
And it sort of surprises me because we've been around for 50 years. You know, we've been saying the same stuff for the last 50 years. And yet people, it shows that every culture and everybody still needs the devil. They still need the other guys. They still need the bad guys, the evil ones, the outsiders. And that's okay. You know, as far as we're concerned, we're in pretty good company. Most of the people that, you know, are the best thinkers, the most brilliant, innovative thinkers are generally labeled as heretics. So, you know, why not take pride in that?
Yeah, obviously, a clear thinker. Tell me about Johnson.
He was a brilliant man. He was far ahead of his time. He started out interested in magic, but he also had a wonderful skill with music. So he played the oboe, and keyboards were his real love. And he became a hypnotist. He worked in a carnival. He worked in a circus. He was a police photographer. And out of all of those roles, he saw human tragedy and human foibles up close and personal. He saw people sneaking in to look at the burlesque girls, you know, in the carnival, and then sneaking across on Sunday to go with their families to see the tent show revivalists and, you know, cleanse their souls of all their wicked thoughts.
Let me go back. You said man was back. Is magic real?
Well, I believe that magic can only be, I can only answer that for myself. You have to answer that for yourself. Well, he began with an interest in magic and the supernatural, and he did. He checked out as many people as he thought might have a gateway into other worlds, other ways of being. Madame Blavatsky or Aleister Crowley, and they were all so dry and boring and sad and obfuscating. He just wanted the real deal. And I think people are attracted to his philosophy. One of the reasons that they're attracted to his philosophy is because he doesn't dance around. He says what he means what he says. He says, this is how I do what I do. Go in the ritual chamber, try it. If it works for you, great. Try these methods that I wrote in the Satanic Witch about basic psychology, reading people, cold readings that he learned in the carnival, the whole process of looking at nonverbal cues, and make it work for you.
Well, those are all tricks. And what I'm asking is, did he find the real thing, or did he practice when he found the real thing?
Well, certainly he did. Certainly.
Well, okay, so magic is real.
Yes. I have experienced magical consequences of what I've done in the ritual chamber. As I say, though, that doesn't mean that if you go into the ritual chamber and you do exactly what I did, it may not work for you. Because, to be honest, now this is just me speculating. This isn't Church of Satan policy, but it's almost as if everybody has a different frequency, you know? And Anton talked about this when he was playing music for animals in the circus. He said, you don't play the same song for an elephant as you do for a tiger, because they have different rhythms, they have different moods. And I think certain people are just attracted to the satanic mythos. We're attracted to the anti-hero, you know, like Lord Byron, you know, with the Miltonian anti-hero. The light bearer, Lucifer, you know, or Prometheus, for example, who risks the wrath of the gods in order to bring the fire of wisdom and intellect and creativity to human beings. You know, he was punished for it. Or the ultimate, of course, in the Garden of Eden, the serpent, you know, tempting with the apple of knowledge from the tree of knowledge. All these metaphors are the same, and these are things that inspire me. Religion presents you with metaphors and myths, stories that codify and strengthen you. They're almost like a group art project to me, you know, because they communicate what is important to a given society, what you hold dear, what rituals you find important, and what those ideals are. So my ideal is not some guy hanging on a cross. I'm sorry, when my back is up against the wall, I want you know, a dynamic, life-affirming, poetic image of Satan, who is the ultimate anti-hero.
And actually, Anton, when you look at him, certainly carried some of those physical characteristics, didn't he?
Oh, he certainly did. Yes, he certainly did, and he emphasized them. True to lesser magical ability, he saw what worked best for him, and he saw the look that he could present, and that fit, and he used it.
Okay, but in the wall, you admit magic is or can be real. If magic is real, then the supernatural is real, right?
Yes.
That's a pretty grudging yes.
Well, you're leading me down to a certain conclusion, and I want to tell you that what we do in the ritual chamber is like a laboratory. I don't think enough has been understood yet about, and again, this gets back to the other guests that you've had. I mean, even like Dean Reagan, the Conscious Universe, or
Oh, you are a listener, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, exactly. Or what is it? The fields, the Taggart. You know, there's a lot that we do not understand about the interactions of time, space, matter. We're sort of wiggling around the edges, and we now understand that true to long history of witchcraft, that blood, semen, all the body fluids and hair that are used traditionally in magic, that now, lo and behold, contains people's DNA. So it is a direct link to an individual. When the witches started doing that, including blood and hair and stuff in their cells. So
I'd never argue with this. No, you're right. We are little snowflakes, and our DNA is definitely us. And so you're right. Hair, blood, semen, bodily fluids, it's all the individual us. So if that is used in the right way, by the right person, there is magic.
With the right intent. There, you know, again, Anton LaVey lays it out very clearly in the Satanic Bible. There are certain elements that need to be addressed, including, you know, imagery, and there's also the balance factor. He includes that very, very important element because, you know, he says that you need to be aware of who you are and what potency you have. If you're a 25-watt person, you shouldn't, and you're sexually attracted to a 100-watt woman or man, maybe you know should set your sights a little lower than trying to attract that particular person. You know, start out.
Interesting. But again, I'm going to keep going down this road as far as I can take you. And I will ask, is it possible to use a person's essence, or whatever essence, in a positive way for them, as well as a negative way for them?
Absolutely. We have 3 basic rituals. We have lust, compassion, and destruction. So the point of going into the ritual chamber in the first place is not primarily to move the universe in the way you want it to. I mean, that's of course good as a side effect, but it's a psychodrama. Let me give you an example. Okay, so someone at work is really working against you. Someone is telling the boss lies about you. They're making you look bad. They're hiding your materials. They're really going out of their way to hurt you. So you're really frustrated. You're thinking about this person all the time. You can't eat. You can't sleep. You're really angry, and you feel impotent. So you go into the ritual chamber. You do a destruction ritual. You concentrate on this person, and you wish them all the bad things to happen to them, and you let it go. You let all of it go. You build up all of that energy like a good orgasm. You just flow out, and it goes out into the universe. And then you let go of the rope. It's done. As far as you're concerned, it is done. It's a done deal.
As far as you're concerned,
You've spoken to the universe. It's going to happen. Whatever's supposed to happen will happen. So next week, you go into work, and this schmo has been promoted and moved to Hawaii. So did your curse work? Well, you don't have to deal with him anymore, do you? So, and maybe he'll get caught in a wonderful storm in Hawaii. And
so maybe you go in this week and he was hit by a Mack truck, now has about 35 broken bones, and he's in traction in the hospital.
There you go. Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yes, well, I love the fact that you can bring up the rosiest metaphor possible in discussing somebody you don't like.
Well, you could have asked me about a lust ritual. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, we'll get to that, sure. You are, I don't know if you want to know, you're an attorney, right?
No.
You're not an attorney? Well, you certainly sound like one.
Well, I argue a lot. Thank you.
I bet you do. I bet you do. Okay, this must be asked. There are many who believe that Anton LaVey actually did conjure up the devil. What do you know about that?
Well, I would say yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about the metaphorical devil, I mean, he unleashed, 50 years ago, he unleashed this power of all the people that now call themselves Satanists. And we are doing fabulous things, wonderful things in publishing. We have a lot of people in the military. We have people making art, tattoos, lawyers, teachers, all sorts of people doing amazing, wonderful things. And that was, there'd never really been an actual calling forth of the devil and giving him his due the way that Anton LaVey did. There'd been, before there'd been sort of prankish ceremonies, the Hellfire Clubs, and references to the devil and heretics and stuff, but there hadn't been people stepping forward and pridefully, purposefully taking the name of Satan and saying, this is how we define Satan, this is what he represents for us, and move over because we're living life and we're having a great time.
Right now, we're in a break point. Relax. We've got several minutes. This is midnight. Exclusively on This is Midnight in the Desert with your host, Bell, the Core, Exile, 1-522-235-5378. That's 952. Call our turning the affiliated souls seeking from your body. Blanche Muckman is my guest. She was actually the pieces of the Church of Satan and is true mistress of the Council of God. And we have talked about interesting things. She is Satanism and magic. Now, I do have a little bit of I don't want to say problem, interest, I guess I would say. If you can now magic is real. And she described something, frankly, that could have easily been described by Dr. Evelyn LaVey. Now, Blanche, have you been a listener long enough to have heard Evelyn LaVey program?
I should have. I'm sure there are a lot of Satanists out there that would, like to slap me about the head and shoulders for not knowing who it is.
She's a witch.
Oh, okay.
And she has described spells going after people, like you would describe, the sort of worker from here. And to do that, how to work spells for passion. We worked out earlier. In other words, you two talk very much alike. You just mentioned Satan and of course you're involved in the church of. But other than that, you just frankly sound a lot alike. So obviously you didn't hear her because I promise you she passed on, you would have remembered. But she was a witch.
Yeah, I probably would. They use a lot of the same, the horned god. is what they call the masculine figure, witches and Wiccans, essentially. I call myself a witch. I'm a satanic witch. So we use a lot of the techniques. We use lesser magic, which is manipulative magic to get what we want on a day-to-day basis, and we use greater magic, which is in the ritual chamber. But I think that where a lot of people part company that are interested in magic part company with Wicca or witchcraft as it is now portrayed. Now they're moving a little bit away from this, but they get all squeamish about the word Satan. They want to use the tools, but they don't want to align themselves with the bad guy. And if you're going to use the tools, then our thought is we should give the credit where the credit's due.
She was not a witch. She described herself as a spiritual warrior.
Okay, well, that's good. When a lot of people that talk that kind of talk and they're not Satanists, I don't understand why they're not a Satanist. It seems like a logical step to me. I know a lot of in the 60s there was a group, calling themselves WITCH, and they were essentially militant feminists that were using the metaphors of being witches and being evil and being ugly and empowering themselves, like the word queer, kind of giving themselves that life and that strength by calling themselves witches. And as a Satanist, I think it's a little bit short of the mark. If you're going that far and you don't align yourself with, because we call ourselves Satanists for a lot of different reasons, as I've already explained, because most of the great thinkers, including and up to Copernicus, Galileo, and more recent, people have always been called heretics and blasphemers. And so why don't you pridefully say, yes, I align myself with all that you consider evil, and I go to those dark places. I mean, I consider you a fellow traveler. You go to those dark places too, and you force people to expand their paradigms. You bring in speculation and provocation, and you make people, you say, okay, here it is. You think about this. I'm forcing you to confront this. And you think about it. You can either reject it and say it doesn't exist, or you can try to expand your consciousness to include this. That's what a good scientist does.
I think that it does exist. I think magic actually does exist. I think that many things that we discuss in the paranormal world do exist. And what I don't understand is if you feel the same way, and I know you do, how can that not lead you to a curiosity about a maker, a creator, and Satan? All of those things being possible.
Well, that does not necessarily follow from me, because
you're going down that road. How can you not continue down that road to the ultimate possible conclusion?
Well, I don't need a maker. I have evolution. I have reason. I have rationality. I don't need a God that created me. If he did, he's an absentee landlord. And I've talked to people about this before too. I can't force myself to believe in a God that I don't believe exists. I can't force myself to believe that some guy 2,000 years ago in the Middle East dying, if he did live, if he was an individual, and he wasn't just a compilation of a bunch of supposed fulfillment of Jewish prophecy, I can't believe that he has any bearing on my life as I live and breathe today. I'm the one who controls what I'm doing now. And if I had to believe, if I really tried to believe in a God that was omnipotent and omniscient, and I could pray to, and he would pay attention to me, each little sparrow and each little butterfly and each little, grain of sand in the cosmos he cares about. Okay, so there's such a being. How does he let happen what he lets happen? How can the fighting continue? How can all of these bad things, and of course they say Satan. Okay,
again, for me, is I say free will.
But let me continue just a minute more. it would create such frustration and anger in me to believe in that kind of God. If I tried to, and I really tried to pray, and I really tried to understand, I would be homicidal, because I could not reconcile why this being who supposedly loves me would threaten me and manipulate me in such a petulant, petty way that I have to bow down and worship him and do what he tells me to do, or he'll throw me into a fiery pit for all eternity. I mean, what kind of love is that? And then,
I kind of agree with a lot of that. I really do. But what about the whole concept of an original creator and then free will? In other words, we're going to be left to do what we're going to do, and our ultimate, up or down will depends on how we do.
Okay, so my free will tells me that I'm a representative of Satan, because if that God created me with a brain, he wants me to have a scientific mind, a rational mind. He wants me to challenge. He wants me to be against self-deceit. And he doesn't want me to bow down and worship him. So I'm doing my job. I'm not killing anybody. I'm not stealing from anybody. I have a very sound base of ethics that I move from. I don't need a God who's going to threaten me or strong arm me so that I'll do the right thing. I do it because I live in a society where it's expected of me, and I want the same respect for my other fellow creatures. And so that's the contract. That's the social contract that Rousseau talked about. I don't hurt you. You don't hurt me. I don't need a God to tell me to do that.
What has Satan done for you that God has not?
He's freed my mind. He's freed my will. He's inspired me. He's strengthened me. He is a guide for me in my life. The whole anti-heroic Miltonian attitude of even when your back is up against the wall, when you don't have anything else in you, even when you've been demonized and put upon and attacked mercilessly by the majority, you still are prideful and defiant and creative and driven, and that's where Satan leads me.
Right. Earlier I asked you if he conjured up the devil, and you responded that yes, he did.
In my mind, he has let loose the gates of hell. There's a whole generation, 2 generations now, of people applying Satanism every day of their lives. And one of the reasons why I'm on your show is, well, 3 reasons. One, because you've got a wonderful show, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be on your show. But also, people are Satanists all around the world now. It's a very popular philosophy, but a lot of times you don't even know when there's a Satanist working next to you, or teaching your children, or babysitting your parents, or you don't know that they're Satanists because they don't. It's not necessary for you to disclose that you're a Satanist. In our version of the world, if it does you no good to expose yourself, then don't do it. People are confused, they don't understand it, but I want people to know that if you find out that your coworker is a Satanist, that there's nothing for you to fear or get freaked out about. These are our ethics, these are our attitudes, these are our habits. We stick to our own most of the time. We keep our nose out of your business. As long as you don't try preaching to me, I'm not going to preach to you. You're not going to find Satanists on the street corners handing out pamphlets or knocking on your door and waking you up at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday or Sunday. We figure we want the information to be out there. That's what the Church of Satan is here for, is to continue to codify and clarify what Anton LaVey said, keep his ideas pure, blending the poetic and the rational parts of human beings. And if you're interested in it, you will seek us out and you'll find out if it's the right thing. If it's not for you, that's fine. But if you know of a Satanist, I don't want you to overreact and say, I want you to understand and be able to have an intelligent conversation with them.
Just to be clear, your relationship with Anton LaVey was?
It started out, I was working in his in the office in San Francisco along with other people. And as I began to know him, I began taking notes on he was an amazing raconteur. He'd tell jokes. He'd tell these stories about his life and about the people that he'd known, and his lion and his leopard, and people that he'd known on the police force would come by, and he'd talk with them. And I had extraordinary access. And I had a pencil and a tablet, and I started writing down some of these stories and some of the stuff that he was talking about, because I knew that he was an important historical man. He will be remembered, many, many years from now. And what he was saying needed to be written down. So I wrote the biography, and we became more intimate. Our relationship changed, and that's why the new Secret Life of a Satanist is, the last few chapters are materially different than the first few chapters. The last chapters are much more, I hope I don't become too maudlin, or I hope I don't break down the image of who he was, but it's much more intimate portrait of him as a man, and what he struggled through in the last years of his life, and how productive he was at the same time. And so I want people to know the strength that he had, because he was undergoing physical challenges as well as the satanic panic and legal challenges, and he survived. He was strong, and right up until the end.
Were they coming after him legally because of what he said he was?
No, because of personal reasons. But of course, you remember the Satanic Panic of the mid 80s to the 90s. Early 90s, a lot of people may not remember, but it was an insane period of time. And we had Geraldo and Sally Jesse Raphael and Oprah Winfrey with these people who were claiming to have been molested as children in satanic sacrifices, and baby breeders, and they tore the whole, well, you know what happened in Manhattan Beach with the preschool. The FBI finally did a thorough search of everything and said there is no international satanic conspiracy. But this was only after at least two documents were introduced into state legislation to ban the practice of Satanism as a religion. Not Judaism, not Church of Christ, Satanism, which is a recognized religion in this country, recognized by in the Chaplain's Guide to the Military Services, and they wanted to ban it as a practice. And
well, never, of course, would kill about.
No, of course not. And there's a lot of weird stuff introduced into state legislature, but the fact that they felt that they could have the impetus to, the backing to introduce it was pretty scary. It didn't go anywhere, but still.
I guess it was scary, to be sure. I mean, it's like the communist purge way back, right?
Well, and people were, their lives were broken. They got fired from their jobs. They were going through divorces, and people lost their children. They had child protective custody coming in and taking their children away, just on accusations. And finally, I think the court system and the insurance companies got tired of paying these bills for these recovered memories and these supposed counselors that were behind so much of it. But it was a time of suspicion, and the two elements that Dr. LaVey hated so much was that they would go on these shows, and instead of talking about real Satanism, they talk about some animal sacrifices or child sacrifices. And so the teenagers who were watching these shows and listening to this hysteria would say, "Ooh, I want to be like, a real Satanist." And so they would go off and maybe sacrifice a dog or something, and that would end up in the local papers. And Dr. LaVey loved animals. He had many, many wonderful animals that he had a great relationship with. And one of the tenets that he makes very clear in our Satanic Satans and in the Satanic Bible is you would not hurt an animal or a child, because they're the most natural magicians. And instead of waving the Satanic Bible around in disgust and saying, "Oh, isn't this awful?" They wouldn't read the book, and they wouldn't tell people that's what Satanism really represented. And he said, all these animals, if there are animals being hurt or killed in this fashion because of, they think that that's what real Satanists do, these animals should be placed on Oprah Winfrey's and Geraldo Rivera's doorsteps, because they're the ones that are doing it, not us. They're the ones that are leading these people to do this. And he felt very sad about that aspect of it.
I once had a young lady on my show whose name was Patsy. She had devoted her life to the devil, to Satan. And she said that she would ensure that her daughter, son, would be taken by the devil, as well as herself. Now, she wanted to call, and she began as a call, and I went on to interview her in depth. But this, I'm telling you right now, this gal named Patsy meant what she said. Now, I understand that that is not what you told us about tonight, but how many Patsies are out there?
Well, there are people that use any number of contexts for their disturbances. They create fantasies for, I'm not a psychoanalyst and I haven't talked to her, I don't know about her specifically, but I'm not qualified to pass judgment on her particular diagnosis, but I know people do a lot who want attention, and who, they may feel even that they have a real pain or they have real memories or something, but usually it can be traced to something very specific, and it's a context that they need to put their pain in, and they need a counselor that can actually help them not feed their fantasies, but actually help them move away from their fantasies into a productive life.
With what you said, and I've listened to what you said very carefully, it's very difficult for me to distinguish between fact and fantasy. Magic is real. That's Blanche Burton, and she is a former high priestess of the Church of Satan, as well as now the chair mistress of the Council of Nine. She was Anton LaVey's partner in life. I think that's probably a fair way to put it. And of course, you also have a child. Now, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So, again, I'm struggling a little bit with this one, because on one hand, you sort of lay out Satanism as humanism. But then on the other hand, you'll go down that highway saying, well, yes, magic is certainly real, and much of the paranormal could be real, and certainly I've discussed anything with this, and that's kind of where you stop. You don't continue down that road. It seems to me once you've embraced the paranormal and the fact that real magic can be done, then you have to be looking at power beyond human power.
Okay, let's try this. Okay, we start from the position that humans are rational animals. We're animals. That's the seventh. Our foundational document is the ninth Satanic statement. And the seventh, if you'll indulge me, Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, more often worse than those that walk on all fours. And because of his divine spiritual and intellectual development, has become the most vicious animal of all. And we can see what's happening because of that viciousness to animals all around the world. So we're selfish and short-sighted creatures. But instead of just leaving it at that, I could be an atheist, or I could be a humanist, but there's a whole half of our brain that isn't addressed by atheism or humanism, because in Anton LaVey, for the first time in history, he reconciled the irreconcilable. He reconciled the poetry, the mystery, the magic of being a human being, of writing symphonies, of writing great literature, of having visions and creating great architecture and creating love, relationships. All of these fantasies that are human, that are a big part of being human. So he fed that into sort of a pomp and mystery of satanic imagery, so that we can utilize all the power within us. And I don't see any irreconcilable there at all. The power does not come from an external source. It comes from me. It comes from you. It comes from the other people that are working with me for the same goals. And that is now being quantified, again, getting back to recent books by Dean Radin and McTaggart and other people. It's now being quantified in a scientific way that there is a group effect when several people, lots of people are concentrating in the same direction at the same time. It does have a measurable effect. And I don't understand it, and I don't pretend to understand the dynamics of it. I think that scientists will be studying it more and more, but we're storytelling creatures. That's what we do. If some alien came from another planet, imagine how weird it would look that we go to movies, that we watch these little boxes with all these stories on them, that we read these books, and they're all fantasies, they're all stories. Why do we do that? Because we're storytelling creatures, and we gain strength from these metaphors and these images and these practices of various emotions. And we like drama, we like symbols, we like passion, we like rituals and celebrations that bind us together and communicate our group values. And that's all that Satanism is, like any other religion.
I'm an atheist that I bring on the show from time to time, named Matthew McAlpin, a very interesting guy, but you heard him one time. Anyway, he wrote a book that I find fascinating, and I would like to describe to you the premise. The book is called The God Part of the Brain. And it basically, I'm not going to do it justice here, but basically it suggests that all human beings, and we include those who are found on otherwise uninhabited islands, natives that worship one thing or another, the sun perhaps, the moon, the trees, it doesn't matter, that human beings are programmed by something in our brain, or some part of our brain, that demands that we worship something, that we believe in some sort of deity greater than ourselves, and he thinks that they will eventually identify that part of the brain that causes this. I wonder how you feel about that, because it is true. If you look around the world, just about everybody, worship something.
Well, I hesitate with the word worship, except that I worship myself, but I don't worship something external. Just metaphorically, that's a poetic representation of me. That those images are a poetic projection of me. But yeah, I certainly think it's a fascinating study, the God part of the brain. I can definitely see that, because it is a near universal that people like to. And what I'm credited to, and I don't think I'm alone in this, is that he even includes this part. When we're in nature, when we're trying to survive, when we're in our earliest stages, our brains were developing, our survival depended on seeing patterns, seeing the gestalt, seeing the tiger hidden in the trees. And so we look for patterns and we try to make sense of things. That's what we do all the time. That's the scientific part of our mind, is trying to make sense. And we like things to progress in beginning, middle, end. We like things to be just. We like for good people to get rewarded and bad people to go to a bad place and get punished. We like that. So we tell stories to ourselves that that's what's really happening. So yeah, I can see that would be a very interesting study. I would like to read this book.
I thought you might. All right, so I have a computer, And I'm just saying to one when they can go to a certain place and send me a message as I'm doing the program, right now. And before I read you anything, what would you imagine the response to your being on the program is to that?
Oh, I think probably people are very happy to talk, to have a real Satanist telling them exactly what Satanism really is. I would imagine, in my mind, that's the way I would like it to be. They say, oh, what an interesting young woman. I really enjoy hearing what Satanism really is. And now when I find out that my boss is a Satanist, I won't be freaked out. That's probably it.
Well, I would say it's more of an issue. For example, oh my God, Art, how can you do this? How can you put on this satanic crap? Click, goodbye. That's somebody scared. And then I got from, Indio, California, absolutely fantastic guest, Art, very intelligent woman, really enjoying this. So it's either love or hate.
Yeah, I can see that. People have that reaction to the Satanic Bible. LaVey said that people will pick up his book and they'll read it and they'll either say, my God, I've felt this way all my life, but I didn't know what to call myself. I guess I'm a Satanist. That's exactly the way I feel. Or they, throw the book across the room in disgust. It's one way or the other. And that's fine. That's great. That's what it should be.
All right, so then why not call yourself a humanist and avoid all of this, everything?
Because that wouldn't be it wouldn't be addressing the essential problem that Satanism, calling it Satanism, represents. Satanism isn't just atheistic; it's anti-theistic, and it's not just a matter of, oh well, okay, so that works for them. Okay, that's fine. Well, it's not fine. People who are running our country, that are running our world, all around the world, most of them are basing their lives on irrationality and muddled thinking and scapegoating. And these people are leading us in certain directions, economically, socially, ecologically. And it's going to affect you. One way or another, it's going to affect you. And so Satanists, by nature, choose active opposition. You need something constructive for your life, not just a denial of something like atheism.
Choose active opposition. So is it called Satanism only to choose having that opposition?
I think it's to recognize that humans, I see Satan as a quintessentially human metaphor. He's the risk taker. He's the underdog. He's the one who triumphs, even though he's vilified. He's the solitary romantic figure, and it's a human. It's humans, not Jesus hanging on the cross and being nice to everybody. It's we've fallen from grace, both of us. Satan and humans have fallen from grace because of our self-determination and our pride. And instead of sniveling and whining, we stumble forward by our own wit and our resourcefulness, and we create whatever life we can with the people that we love and cherish.
Are there sins in Satanism?
Yes, there are actually. Strange you should ask that. How about they came up with it?
Okay, how about commandments?
Yes, our 9 satanic statements written and published in the Satanic Bible are codifying statements, I would say.
You really sound like a lawyer.
You know what the final 9th satanic statement is? I think you'll enjoy it. Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had, as he's kept it in business all these years.
Well, where's that? It is the ultimate threat that puts everybody in line.
Yeah, exactly. And why do you have to have a loving God that strong-arms people into doing good?
God, historically, has a temper.
Well, but
he struck people down, he destroyed cities.
And you're getting shoveled this stuff from your parents. They're telling you about this guy. Where does he live? I don't know. He lives in a cloud somewhere. We've got the space station up there that they can't see him. Well, he lives more over that way. You know, I don't know what it looks like. And kids are smart. You know, they start asking questions pretty early on, and they understand when someone's avoiding truth. And when they start feeling that mommy and daddy are not telling them the truth about this, then they start calling into question everything that mommy and daddy tells them.
And you are right. If you ask the wrong questions, even in Sunday school, you risk rejection.
Right. But how do you feel about mommy and daddy lying to you?
Well, I don't think I blame mommy and daddy, or I would say they're lying because they probably carry that belief that they're passing on.
Well, I don't see how any child can get past that. That's when the trouble comes. That's when you reach adolescence and you start realizing that maybe a lot of what you've been taught is not true. And all of those sacred values, maybe they're not real. And so, and when you link ethics to the supernatural, that God tells you to do this, not because it's right or wrong, not because essentially it's good for civilization for you to make these decisions, but because some supernatural guy with a long white beard is strong arming you and threatening you if you don't do right, then that's not good for society. You know, that's not a good structure. That's not a good foundation. It should be, because this is what is right for the world. This is how we bind together as a human race, you know?
If the world were to suddenly embrace Satanism, do you think that there would be far less violence, killing, and we're seeing so much, for example, people walk into movie theaters and just begin shooting and then take their own life.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff. Do you think that Satanism would calm some of this down?
I would hope that people of a satanic mind would be would understand the necessity of getting along with their fellow human animals. I wake up in the morning and I say, I will not kill someone today because I don't want to be killed. You know, I can tolerate a lot.
You have to remind yourself not to do that?
I do, yes. But really, I mean, I think if the world was suddenly, filled with Satanists, which is never ever going to happen, because again, talking about different parts of the brain, we always have to have the 2% who are the leaders or the innovators or the risk takers, and the rest of the people that really would rather just get along and not think about things very much. Just tell me what to do, tell me where to go, tell me what to buy, and I'll be comfortable, and you tell me what to do. And that, but the Satanists who stand out, the creative people, the eccentric people, the weirdos, I think that they would be better at running things, because they would hopefully have actual discussions, not ad hominem attacks. They would start talking about things, not pigeonholing themselves and saying, well, I'm a conservative, so I have to vote this way, or I'm a liberal, so I have to vote that way, and that's a bad person over there. The Koch brothers are awful or evil, or the unions are awful or evil, because they're in the other camp, and I don't have to listen to anything they have to say. I just have to listen to what my party tells me to do. And that's how we've gotten into the trouble that we have, because people aren't voting. They aren't voting the issues or the man. They're voting according to their party.
Hold on there, we're on a break. I'm on that. This is midnight. What is my guess? As the high priestess, the church of Satan, and she gives them the eternalness of the council of nine. Once you circle back, we sort of went right over it. What are some of the satanic schemes?
Satanic sins. The first one, you will not be surprised to know. The first one is stupidity. That's the top of the list, because humans are, as I say, tend to be very short-sighted and selfish creatures. I'm all for selfishness, but when you are so short-sighted that you don't see the consequences of what you're doing and the long-term consequences to the earth and to other humans and to animals, then that's just being stupid. And yeah, and the second one is pretentiousness. Into posturing, it's very irritating. And we, Anton LaVey always had the idea that if you're a satanic priest, you should be able to take the garbage out. You have to be able to come up with the goods ultimately. And that's what made his philosophy so strong. What makes his philosophy so strong? Because he was a very genuine person. Whenever he would when you have someone come over, a lot of times they'd want to talk about Satanism. He didn't want to talk about Satanism all the time. He wanted to talk about old movies or cars or guns or music or characters. And people were not disappointed because he was a wonderful raconteur and a fabulous musician. So if you were treated to an evening of music with him, you'd walk away very happily. But he would say these things, and when he sounded a little bit pompous or pontifical, or as he perceived himself to be taking himself too seriously, he'd undercut it with a joke. He had a whole repertoire of jokes, and that was one of the books that I wish he had been able to put together before he passed away, was a book of satanic parables, which would have been all of his favorite jokes.
Okay. While we're on that subject, and I won't listen, but while we're on the subject, it now has been 50 years since the Church of Satan began, and 20 years since Anton died in 97. So an obvious question is, how's the church doing without Anton?
Well, that's a very good question, actually, because we would have no way of knowing. He was the founder, he was the progenitor. Was this just a personality cult, or did he create a philosophy with legs that actually can stand on its own and lead people to greater interesting achievements and interesting things? And I think the answer is that we're doing great. We've got more members all the time. We've got more adherents all the time. We're being productive. We're getting things moving and shaking in the world. He was a very strong leader.
Do you proselytize? I mean, obviously you are doing that in a sense tonight. But I'm inviting that. You don't knock on doors and hand out pamphlets. So how does the word get around?
Well, it's the tradition of the left-hand path is that you have to seek it out. It is a singular path, and it's a dangerous path. And so there are a lot of imitators out there. There are potholes along the road. But if you're drawn to Satanism and you like the metaphors and you like what you've heard of Satanism, if you find it intriguing, then, we have the website, churchofsatan.com. It's a portal for all the activities that a lot of Satanists are doing right now around the world. And it's got a lot of materials on there for what Satanism is and isn't.
You said it was a dangerous path.
It is a dangerous path, yes it is. Because it's a singular path, and it will lead you into... It will lead you as close as you can get to madness. What I mean by that is, if you are inculcated with Satan is evil, Satanists are evil all your life, and you step into that world and you're not ready for it, then your very fear will act against you. you will conjure forth, because the whole idea is that we're conjuring things, we're focusing our energy on what we want to achieve. But you can undercut yourself. You can actually hurt yourself. And if you're feeling guilty or you're feeling afraid, or if there's any residual ill feelings, and this is purely psychological, this isn't magical, this is psychological. When someone is doing something that deep down inside they're conflicted about, you can manifest it physically with pain, aches, headaches, stomach upset, and drawing all kinds of terrible things into your life. So it's not for everybody. As I say, it's a particular vibration that people find brings them joy, happiness, and inspiration. But if you don't find that from Satanism, run away, and run away fast.
You know what a Ouija board is, right?
Yes.
Okay, I don't think a Ouija board per se is dangerous, but I had a very, very bad experience with one that I will not discuss and never have publicly. I think that it is the intent of the users of that board that brings about some of the bad experiences that people have had with it.
I'd say you're definitely on the right track with that. I would also say that, as I was trying to explain, if you have any residual doubts or fears or guilt, that's a good medium for those things to open up to you and start attacking you. But again, not from something outside. You're conjuring it for yourself.
Well, no, be careful. Yes, you are conjuring it, but you at the same time admit there is something outside.
I admit that we create conduits for our own achievements and creating our own goals as we move through life magically. Yes.
All right. Some more sins. We've got two: stupidity, pretentiousness.
The third is solipsism. That means accepting everybody else to be like you are. You're a moral person, an ethical person. You have certain values. You're vulnerable to somebody that comes along and tries to steal your money because he doesn't have the same values, but he might give you a wonderful line to try to convince you to part with your goods. So you have to be on guard. That's the essence of solipsism. You have to be constantly vigilant and look through illusions that people are trying to, it's very Machiavellian.
Good advice, though. Anything else that would catch your attention?
Oh, let's see. Self-deceit, herd conformity, and the last one is lack of aesthetics. That's just a terrible sin.
Lack of aesthetics.
Yes,
Meaning?
right. Well, it's part of lesser magic, really. It's a way of applying aesthetics, and again, it does evoke a certain magic.
Yes, I'm on go. Tonight is Blanche Barton. She was a go-to company, that's for sure. Blanche was the high priestess of the Church of Satan. She is the chairmistress of the Council of London, and we have been discussing Satanism. It may well be that your view of Satanism, or what you thought you were going to hear tonight, is not what you're hearing tonight. You may be surprised, pleasantly, or you may be scared. It's hard to say. I think there's a lot of both out there, frankly. Blanche, have you ever regretted being Satanist?
Not one moment. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and that's an interesting thing, talking about 50 years of the Church of Satan. And one of the questions is, does it act as a religion should? Does it help you guide your life to prosperity and happiness? Does it help you work within a community? Is it just, put on black clothes, listen to heavy metal music, Marilyn Manson, and piss off your parents or something? Or is it something that can actually lead you through getting a job, going to school, having children, raising children, deaths, births. Yes, it does, and it's a foundation for a lot of people who have been lifelong Satanists now. And the most gratifying thing that happens to me sometimes now, and I'm humbled by it, is when people come up to me and they say, you know, Miss Barton, I've read your books. I was a teenager, I was being rebellious, I went to Satanism, and I found out what it really was, and it really changed my life. And now I'm a successful attorney, or, you know, video producer, or, you know, whatever they're doing with their lives, but they've made a life for themselves. They're married, they're not married, they have children, you know, they're happy, and that's very gratifying.
Are you ready to talk to the public?
Oh, absolutely, anytime.
An interesting experience. All right, on site is Matt. Hello, Matt. You're on the other voice button. Okay, back away from your mic a little. You're too loud. Is that better? A little better, yes. Thank you.
Well, Art, I have to say, tonight's show is very controversial, which makes for excellent radio.
Well, look, I'm not afraid of anything. I'll talk about anything that's interesting, and this clearly is so.
All right, Blanche, first of all, I'd like to say I greatly admire your convictions for this. Obviously, it requires a lot of bravery and a tough skin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Matt.
Well, there are 2 topics I'd like to bring into the conversation. Number one, a little thought experiment. Hypothetically, if there was an evil cosmic entity, not necessarily the devil per se, but let's say in the very nature of the cosmos, there's a being that is pure evil, would it not be the best way for it to gain followers and supporters to do its will, to convince its supporters that what they're doing is actually for themselves? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, and you're not the first person that has presented that idea, you know, that the devil is ultimately, you know, the liar, so you can't believe anything he says. But again, I use it as a metaphor for life. I use it as a representative of liberty. And if there was an absolute evil entity, and you could bring me proof that there was such an evil entity that was somehow fogging my mind, then that would be a very valuable thing to do. But maybe this creature that you're talking about, you know, it could be God just the same. You know, it could be someone like God who's got these people under his control, and these humans are giving me all this energy, and I make them worship me, and it doesn't matter to them. I've got it worked so that there's this other guy that I blame all the bad stuff on, and if they worship me and they give me energy, then I get stronger, and you know, it doesn't matter if I kill lots of kids or make people hate each other or kill lots of animals, they'll still love me. So, you know, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but, you know, it's a thought experiment that doesn't go very far for me.
That's a fairness. And also, you expressed that you admired cultural and industrial trailblazers, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, you might know that many businesses, like, for example, Apple, you know, in California, they're practicing mindfulness and meditation, which is principles of the Eastern religions, belief systems that promote separation from the ego. Now, it seems that your beliefs are sort of contrasting that. It's self-worship and, I guess, reinforcement of the ego. What exactly?
A lot of attachment going on here.
A lot of attachment going on, she says.
Oh, well, there are, you know, there is evidence that meditation and mindfulness can increase productivity. And what are do you believe in karma? Do you believe in reincarnation? Was there is there even the possibility of such?
That's a lot. Karma, I would suspect so. What's that?
Well, I hope that there are consequences. I think that the way we perceive it is you're asking for the consequences that you get out of life. You conjure forth what you get. So yeah, there are definitely consequences for the actions that you take. As far as getting back to your idea about meditation and consciousness, yes, definitely strengthening your own mind, strengthening your body, being able to use yoga and strengthening the energies that flow through us. I personally am a great follower of that, and I think a lot of Satanists are, that we're bioelectrical beings. And if we can concentrate that, again, that's what magic is about, is concentrating our energies, aligning ourselves with our true core, and being able to release and bring in energy from around us and release it appropriately.
Okay, well, if so, as I'm listening to you, you think there is something in common, but if there isn't, there is a spell that will take care of it, right?
Yeah, we take care of that. We're sort of the cleanup team.
You also asked about reincarnation.
My mind is open to reincarnation, quite frankly.
Really?
Because personally, I've had some interesting experiences along those lines, like with the Ouija board. I don't need to go into them. But my mind is open to a lot of things. Like Lewis Carroll said, I try to believe 3 unbelievable things before breakfast.
Wow, your mind is open to reincarnation. That'll tap into it so hard. Here's something Donnie says on the computer. Donnie and Sibeli, ask your guests about entering LaVey's deathbed confession and accepting Jesus Christ on his deathbed. It's all over YouTube and the internet. So if the Church of Satan, if this is true, the Church of Satan is bunk.
Well, there you go. I am here to tell you that I was present in those final moments, and there was no deathbed confession. There was no hallelujah. I see it all now. There was no, oh my God, please forgive me. He had become more determined and more committed to his philosophy as he grew older, because he saw the way that the world was going, and he knew that he needed to be a voice for that.
Okay,
so
Terry, somewhere out there, you're on the air with Blanche. Where are you?
Hello, can you hear me?
I hear you. Where are you?
I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio.
You're on the wrong line, and that's our international line, my friend.
Sky.
All right, I'm very sorry. You will have to give us a call at MITD51. MITD51 for the North America 8155. Let's try Lewis on North American side. Hello, Lewis.
Good evening. My questions are not judgmental, but just factual. Is the Church of Satan recognized by the federal government for tax exemptions? I'm curious if they're convicted of a crime and put in prison, do they get any special treatment? And finally, did she call herself a witch? I missed that if she said so.
That's a lot of questions. Hold on, don't go away. Let's get answers.
Okay, the first question, yes, we are recognized as a religious entity by the United States government. We're included in the Chaplain's Guide to Military, to chaplains servicing military people, and that's updated periodically. However, we do not take advantage of our tax-exempt status, because one of our vital premises, is that all churches should be taxed appropriately like any other business. So, as an ethical point, we do pay taxes. The second question was...
In some sense, it's probably answered by the first. That is, if necessary, if you were put in jail, for example, you would get special treatment in terms of accommodating your practices. It sounds like if you're in the first, you're probably in the second. I don't know that was exact.
We do have prisoners who contact us who say they're having trouble getting materials, and they do try to provide, it depends on the chaplain at the particular prison and the administrators of the particular prison. Some of them are very open. They should have the right to practice Satanism, at least get together with fellow Satanists and have their materials and perhaps rituals within the confines of the requirements of the prison. They can't have daggers, and they can't have firearms, and they can't have candles or certain things. But just getting together to read the Satanic Bible. Usually, most prisons are very accommodating. And yes, I would call myself a witch. I do.
Well, thank you for answering my questions. Thank you, Mr. Rob.
Sure. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. We have so many. Let's go to way back to West Virginia. Hello.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
We've been talking about a lot of positive things about Satanism, but let's talk about satanic ritual abuse for a second.
Okay, let's.
In the 80s especially, there were a lot of cases dealing, we mentioned the government-related daycares and the military bases daycares. There were a lot of children that came out there with STDs. And we were talking about the military, and while we're talking about Satanism, while we're talking about the military, let's bring up,
Well, all right, let's deal with one at a time, right? Satanic ritual abuse of children. That was addressed earlier, but Blanche, go ahead.
Yes, the McMartin preschool case, I believe one of the cases that he's referring to, was one of the most extensive and perhaps to date still the most expensive and extensive court case in California history. A lot of accusations were thrown around, including that the kids were raped during the rituals, that some of them said they'd been put naked into a cage with a lion, and Chuck Norris was identified as one of their molesters. They said that they had their faces smeared with feces and blood and urine, and that they'd seen babies cooked and eaten, and backhoes were brought in, heavy machinery was brought in. All of this was supposed to have taken place in tunnels beneath the preschool by the people that were running the preschool. No tunnels were found, no lions were found. The most damning evidence that was found was toy rabbit ears and a candle. And I know that there was a lot of hysteria, but there were a lot of people going on shows to get attention. I
remember this, sir, don't you? I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. But I want to go deeper than that. Let's go deeper. There's I studied a lot into occultism. There is power. And, going back to, that's why anal sex, anal ring.
There is power in what? There is power in what?
There's power in the blood of children, the blood of ritual human sacrifice.
Let's find out. Let's find out.
And
let's find out. Thank you for the call. That's a pretty key point, I think, to address. He's saying there is power in abuse, or in sacrifices, or in, what about it? Is there anything to it?
Well, this again was addressed quite keenly in the Satanic Bible, and I think it was a reaction to what LaVey found with practitioners, or at least legends about practitioners of magic up until that point. And he was disgusted by the idea that someone would take an innocent animal. Even Aleister Crowley talked about animal sacrifice, and that someone would take an innocent animal and shed its blood to try to get some kind of power from that animal, when the truth of the matter is it's a substitute for a good orgasm. If you can't go into a ritual chamber and have a good orgasm, work yourself up into a real frenzy and let go of all that energy, let go of all your inhibitions, and become a real human being in the ritual chamber, you have no business trying to perform magic at all.
Right on. Well, that was all ridiculous.
Well, it was proven by the FBI to be ridiculous. A lot of people, a lot of police Cops for Christ is what they were termed, who had these seminars that they were selling to various police forces around the country to try to gain money from them. There were also a lot of counselors, religious or otherwise, that were getting a lot of money. And there were the talk show people who needed eccentric people to go on their shows and make a good controversial story. So everyone was gaining except the real Satanists, you know, who would try to go on these shows to get another word in edgewise. They didn't give me the kind of time that you've been kind enough to give me, Mr. Bell. When we would get on, if we would even get on to tell what Satanism was really about, we'd get maybe 2 sentences. And the rest of the show would all be about baby breeders or a lot of insanity. So we didn't fit the paradigm. And then they tried to, as a defense for that, they said, well, you know, they didn't want to get sued by us. So they'd say, well, we're not talking about you. We're talking about bad Satanists. We're talking about traditional Satanists. So they tried to make it into categories. And Anti-LaVey said, no, there are Satanists and then there are nuts. Just like there are Christians and then there are nuts. You know, you can use the Easter Bunny, you can use Jesus, you can use Buddha to justify whatever crimes you want. But that doesn't mean that you're actually following that religious philosophy.
Okay, very quickly, Leonard on the site, you're on the other side.
Yeah, I talked to this English class. She said that God makes you do what He wants or do His will. So God gives you freedom of choice. You try to make your own choice. God doesn't force you to do what He wants you to do.
Well, He threatens you. He threatens you with eternal damnation and a fiery pit if you don't follow the rules, right?
He doesn't.
Oh, He doesn't.
He does.
I have the wrong stories then.
Satan is why it makes you do things that makes you do things.
So in other words, anything you do that's bad, you can just sort of slough that off on Satan.
And that's the problem with scapegoating. That's the essence of what we're trying to get across here, is that when you scapegoat people, like some people are doing in the Middle East right now, then you can go do whatever you want to them, and they don't deserve your empathy, they don't deserve your sympathy, because they are unclean, and they are demonic, and they are possessed, and they are evil. So you can hurt them, and you can demonize them, and you can scapegoat them, and do whatever you want to them, because they are the others. That's very dangerous thinking. It's not an us versus them. I'm a human being, you're a human being, Leonard, and we all have foibles, we all have faults, we all have strengths. And we have to get together to find out how to get together, how to solve problems.
Good. We'll be right back. We'll be right back. I'm on Bell. This is Midnight in the Dead. Listen very quickly. Let me give the numbers, you know how everything's full. The public number is 952 225 5278. 952 225 5278. The Skype highways are in North America, MITV 51. MITV 51. Outside of North America, MITV 55. That's MITV 55. Very important news, my guest, and she was rather the high priestess of the Church of Satan and is the current mistress of the Council of Nine. Welcome back. A couple of computer messages for you. Dan says she dodged the question. It was about harming children, not animals. Wish?
Again, it's addressed in the Satanic Bible very clearly, and I think I've said earlier in this interview that we value children as our guides. They're the closest to their natural state. They haven't been inculcated with adults' guilt and all the things that children are or saddled with from a very early age in contemporary society. I love to interact with children, and we would not harm any children, and that's very clearly stated in the Satanic Bible.
Thank you for that clarification. Calvin asks, or says, hi, you guys are very well spoken and charming. Would you like to comment on the Church of Satan trying to sue the state of Oklahoma to put up a statue at the Capitol? It seemed to me to be an attack on Christianity.
That is not the Church of Satan. That is an unaffiliated small group that we consider rather laughable. They came off as sort of street performers, they're trying to put some kind of wedge between, they're trying to create controversy regarding the church and state. Like if they try to put this statue in, and that'll force other people out of the public square. The true satanic posture, as articulated very well by our high priest, is that we believe in the founding fathers' vision of separation of church and state, not having any Buddhist or Hindu or Satanic or Wiccan or Christian association, because it's very dangerous when church and state are working concert. Then you've got the civil aspects and you've got the magical aspects of the boogeymen that are going to hurt you if you don't do right. And our founding fathers were as close as they could be to deists. Most of the ones who were the real movers and shakers, Thomas Jefferson and Paine, they were deists, and they didn't believe in a God having real effect in your life. Of course, in those days you had to posture toward Christianity a lot, but they were free thinkers. I think that America is a quintessentially satanic country. We grew right out of the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment, and people like James Madison, John Adams. That's a whole different conversation. But
nevertheless, the founding fathers saw the danger of mixing it and wrote it out.
Precisely.
Okay, Terry, somewhere in the you're with Flag Department.
I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay.
And I went to Cincinnati with a possibility there. I became a member of the Church of Satan in the early 1990s, and I was calling to some Baptist church and youth groups, and I founded, the Satanic Bible, the Ultimate, and usually blocked, and actually I learned about Satanic Bible. And it was like in cold weather, thrown in your face. It was like, it's reason and logic and open-mindedness when it comes to the areas of supernatural and magic. And so that's kind of what my was. I became been pounded on my door. I can get a meeting and all this just out of respect for the logic that was preparing and getting to what I saw my dreams on stage. It was like awesome.
Nobody found your door.
Yeah. I have two questions real quick. One for the branch. Are you familiar with the studies on the pineal gland and the human brain, essentially the third eye and DMT and DMT, and how that kind of, I believe, goes in with energy to that. And then also in your personal magical experiences, like for me, sometimes, I feel real strong, and then it's like, I feel weak sometimes in magic and nature. And I don't think it's like if I'm physically sick or emotional stress, just like those waves of how energy, like have you guys had experience there? That's all.
Okay. Number two first, and then we'll get to DMT.
Yes, things do come in waves. I think the wave has been proven to be essential to the earth in general. There's a waxing and a waning that humans are also aligned with, and within your own magical practice, it's very probable that some days, and again, this has been measured scientifically. Some days you feel alert and on top of things and right on top of your game, and there are days you just feel sort of dissipated and not really concentrating. So yes, and I have heard about the pineal gland and how that's a known chakra. Are very powerful ones. So, there have been a lot of people throughout the millennia who have talked about the third eye and its importance to magic and meditation.
Okay. Drugs and Satanism. He mentioned DMT. Are there many who feel that drugs open the mind in a way, and surely they do. What do you think? What does the church think?
I can only refer back again to Anton LaVey. Of course, he started the Church of Satan in the 60s in San Francisco. 1966, the Summer of Love, there were people dropping acid all over the place, and there were people that were pointing to acid as a method, a gateway to wonderful enlightenment and concentration and new worlds and new achievements. And he had a hard and fast rule that he did not allow people that were drunk or high in the ritual chamber because things could be very misconstrued, people could become violent, they could become distracted and distracting, and he felt that that was not the way to perform magic, that you need to be concentrated, you need to be clear on your intent and what you're doing in the ritual chamber. So I suppose there are plenty of people that use recreational drugs, but again, if you're doing it illegally, then you have to suffer the consequences if you get caught. And if we know about it, then you'll probably get kicked out of the organization.
All right, let's go to Calgary, Alberta. Well, I didn't that's right. Calgary, Alberta.
Hello?
Oh, yes. Hi, Ruby.
Hi, this is Nick from Calgary. I am probably super tired of feeling questions about satanic ritual abuse, but I have kind of a weird angle. That's okay?
Let's hear it.
Okay, in the wake of the death of Jimmy Savile, which is a British TV presenter and entertainer, it's come out that in Britain at least there actually was a massive pedophile conspiracy in the 1980s and late 70s. But it wasn't Satanist.
Well, heaven knows there's pedophiles all over the world, sir. But
Yeah, but it's conservatives. And at this point, the investigation has gone so far as to implicate former prime ministers.
and the point is,
Well, the point is, my question is, how do you respond to, the moral hypocrisy? Because again, these are the same people who wanted to ban gay people from teaching, who wanted to exclude non-Christian religions, from public venues. And at the same time, it's now coming out that this
there's hypocrisy all over the world. I mean,
I just wanted to comment on, the fact that, again, these are, the squares of the squares. These are,
there's no end to the height of hypocrisy. I don't know what's it.
Well, when he started talking about a massive pedophile ring, I thought he was talking about the events in the Catholic Church, and I'm not kidding, because they were moved around and protected, and that was a terrible breach of trust.
It's undeniable, absolutely undeniable. I don't know how the church ultimately is going to deal with it, but
right, but I don't give it a cheap shot. I mean, it was terrible. It was an awful thing, but I don't then equate, all of Christianity with pedophiles. These were individuals that unfortunately were protected by a structure that didn't want the embarrassment, and a lot of children suffered abominably because they wanted to protect their structure. But they've had to look at that now, and they've had to own up to it and act appropriately. As for the conservatives, a pedophile ring, I would have to know the specifics. I know they would have to. I don't think that it's associated with Satanism, is it?
no.
No.
No, that isn't what he was saying. And I was saying there's no way, he was talking about conservatives and then some of them being outed as pedophiles, and there is no end to that kind of hypocrisy.
Right, of course we're against hypocrisy. That's one of the reasons that the Church of Satan was founded, because of that hypocrisy.
You like to be angel, is that right on site?
Yeah, it's not here in this Paula,
Okay.
which is California.
Okay, so that's what's on your Skype. That's what we can do, is call you by what's on Skype.
Okay, thank you. I have a question. Thank you for your enlightening discussion tonight. I'm actually interested in that. I have a question though. Why do you consider, I have many friends of Wiccans, and why do you consider them to not practice magic properly?
Well, if they're practicing magic and it's working for them, my only beef with Wiccans, well, two beefs really, is one, they worship a horned god, and if you're worshiping a horned god, I don't see why you don't just call it Satan. You know, you can call it Hand, you can call it Lucifer because it's more comfortable for you, but just walk here and call it Satan. You know, and I just ask you because I was talking to one of the wisdom on me, and he was like, "Did you just say that?" But yeah, thank you. The other point is that during the Satanic Panic, a lot of Wiccans were asked, well, what about Satanists? What do they do bad things? Or they were attacked. They were thrown into the same boiling pot of water with Satanists in these accusations. And instead of coming forward and saying, yes, I'm a Wiccan, I've read about Satanism, I know Satanists, and they don't do bad things. Instead, a lot of them actually crawled on the bandwagon to protect themselves and said, oh, we're good witches, but those people over there, I don't know what they're doing. So I was very upset with that. That was a long time ago, granted. But there's still an essence of us versus them, good versus evil in there. Whereas I say, don't put yourself in a protective circle. Invite new demons in. Own what you are as a human being, and deal with that.
All right.
Oh, thank you.
All right, you're very welcome. Thank you for calling. Interesting, really interesting, actually. Going to, I think, Alan Town on the phone.
Hi, it's Johnny from Pennsylvania. Yep.
Yes, sir.
Am I on the air?
Oh, you certainly are.
I apologize. I have one question and hi, Blanche. I have a question and an example. So the question is, you talk a lot about the human intelligence and how we're the better, smarter animals now. We're more vicious animals, and the next step of evolution, that's why we're the top of the gene. So the question is, can you conceive of an intelligence greater than man's intelligence that would require man to have faith? And the example that I would use is Abraham from the Bible, who waited 100 years to have his son. And then when he has his son, God tells him, take him up on the mountain and sacrifice him, which seems crazy to us. I mean, I would have a really hard time with that. But then if you look at it 2,000 years later, God allows his own son to be sacrificed for a greater cause. So can you see that that's possible? Not necessarily right or wrong, just that there might be something.
So God did request that or order that as a proof of faith, right?
Yeah, it's faith. This is really faith against intelligence. Faith seems irrational, and it's always going to. But that doesn't mean it is. That doesn't mean it's wrong. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I get your point. The first thing I'd like to address is the idea that I feel that humans are top of the food chain and more highly evolved than other animals. I think the point that I was trying to make, that Anton LaVey has made with the seventh satanic statement that I read, is that because we quote unquote feel that we are so divine and spiritual and intellectual, we have become the most vicious animal of all, meaning that other animals are being the best animals that they are being. Humans don't always live up to their potential. They throw a lot of log jams in their own way. They're more afraid of their own success than they are of their own failure. The humans, like a single spider or a bird, they're out there doing their dirty little things. They're doing the best they possibly can, and they use every resource that they can. They go toward pleasure, they avoid pain, and they do it in the most efficient manner they can, which is what biologists define life as, is, those three elements. And so don't think that I'm saying that humans are so superb and wonderful compared to other animals, because I truly don't. But getting to your point with faith, as a Satanist, I feel that faith is the ultimate betrayal of all we are as humans. I understand your point about sort of giving yourself over to a greater power and trusting in that power, but I can't do that. I can't relinquish that. If I do that, if I give up my independence, my discernment, if I give up the ability to question things scientifically and challenge everything, I've given up everything that we've evolved to be over the last, 90 years.
And I can certainly understand that, especially now in this day and age, we know so much as humans. We have, if certain visions of reality can be believed, we have plunged into materialism and are cut off from what we used to be able to see as spirit.
Sorry, I'm sorry to do this, Philip, but I'm way short on time, and you can respond to that when we get back, but we've got to take a break. So, hold on. What a show is what I would say. What a program. I suspect not what you thought it would be. Blanche, partners with us, I'm on top. All right, well, I think we should all have a moment of silence. Tonight's show is going to be serious evidence that JC has passed away. If not, he's really would have been here. He's been absent from his Facebook page since early or before mid-July, and so just a moment of silence for he who would have been here. And with that, back to Blanche, Blanche, I have this caller over because I don't think he was finishing his thought. Caller?
Yeah, just as I was saying, plunging materialism, it's very difficult now without prophets and things like that, real prophets to show us what God's really saying, to have any kind of faith, and really all we have left is the light of human reason. Albert Clay talks about it in his pre-Sonic writings as something we don't even have superstition about or faith. And that's absolutely true, we don't. But it's not, for me, it's not enough. And I guess the real question is, I think the question is up to everybody. Do you believe in your own intellect or man's intellect, or do you believe in God or faith or whatever you are, Christ, whatever you want to call it? I think there's something greater than man. It's hard for me to imagine that there's not.
Blanche, you want to comment?
Well, I'm a big advocate of materialism, what we can see, what we can feel, the human body, the human brain, our emotions. That I'm a big believer in the sins, and I try to practice at least one a day. Lust and gluttony are two of my favorites. But not to be flippant, I understand. He seems like a very sincere man, Johnny, and I feel that there is a lot of materialism going on in the world as well, and we're sacrificing happiness in a certain way because of it. And recently I was at a conclave, a gathering in Washington, D.C. of Satanists at the end of April, and I gave a little talk, and one of the things, it was a wonderful gathering with terrific people there from many different professions, and it was great to be in a room full of people that you don't have to explain your basic thoughts to, who are all attuned with what we were thinking. But there is a difference between greed and satisfaction, and what we're doing to the earth is a consequence of unbridled greed and not looking down the road to see the consequences of what we're doing. And that is a real problem. But again, that doesn't come from somebody, Satan or some demons or some God whispering in my ear. That comes from looking around and seeing what's happening to our planet and crying about it. I mean, and wanting to do something about it. So.
Trey in Atlanta, Georgia, I think, right? How you doing? Very well. One of the first weeks in our located in Woodland. Oh, yes. Very sad. And I'm glad it's an honor to speak with you.
Thank you.
I was curious, I just watched Devil's Reign, but Anton has done it.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could tell us about his experiences with Ken Anger and Hollywood.
Yes, he had a wonderful relationship with Kenneth Anger. Kenneth Anger was again, in the 60s, San Francisco scene very much, and he's an innovative filmmaker. He used techniques that were sort of, I guess, in the psychedelic realm, but they're very effective films, and I know he has a lot of fans to this day. He influenced a lot of small films. And they were very good friends. I think he's sort of drifted away since Dr. LaVey has passed. He's gone in other directions.